Thanks very much for that warm welcome. And I won't take any offence if halfway through you decide you do need that translation after all, you need to walk round. I haven't done that before, had to get translated into English to English people before, but perhaps there's always a first. Campaigns that engage people. Well, my name's Gregor Poynton, and I'm the political director of Blue State Digital. We're an agency and technology company who look to create change, whether that be for a non-profit that's looking to engage their supporters and donors in a new way, or whether that be for a brand that's looking to engage their fans and to try and use digital tools to try and engage and inspire customer loyalty. Our history, I guess, just very quickly, is in American politics. Howard Dean, I don't know if many of you remember from the 2004 Democratic nomination. He was the first, I guess, online campaigner. In 2004, he raised a lot of money online. He raised a lot of interest. But to be honest, the campaign ultimately kind of fairly spectacularly crashed and burned. But our founding partners who were on that campaign thought, there's something in this. We've raised a lot of money, we've raised a lot of interest. This just can't be left to kind of go off into the ether. We want to make sure that we're ready for the next candidate, the next cause that comes along. And so that was kind of how Blue State was born. Today we do it for a lot more broad, we're a lot broader than just politics. We do it for causes and some brands as well. As I say, for us, it's the through line for us, for each of these clients, is about how they try and use digital to engage and inspire people and try and have different and more interesting conversations with the people that matter to them most. And that for us is kind of at the core of what we try and do. So, politics is still at the heart of Blue State, and it's still very much in our DNA. And over the course of I guess the last 8 years or so, we've been very lucky to work on 4 winning presidential campaigns. Barack Obama both times, Dilma Rousseff in Brazil, Peña Nieto in Mexico, and François Hollande in France. And what I'm going to do today is, I guess, draw on some of those lessons learned from those campaigns and others that we've ran across the world to try and, I guess, think about ways in which you can use those practical tips and examples to really power your campaigns as you go forward. For us, political campaigns and your online supporters can do 3 things for you. They can get your message out, you can mobilize on the ground, and they can raise money. Your message is very powerful now in terms of, obviously, particularly around social. If you can put your content into someone else's hands and then they share that amongst their networks, that's so much more powerful than me as an organization saying, pumping out a video or pumping out content. That's a sort of little mini endorsement every time someone shares your video, shares your content on Facebook. Mobilization. That for us is key as well. Our whole ethos is about how we can actually get people to switch off their laptops and go off in the real world and have real world conversations with people. If it's politics, it's knocking on doors, trying to convince people to vote. For other organizations, it's events, and it's about bringing people together offline as well as building that online community. And for us as well, particularly for politics and non-profits, raising money is really important. And it's not for us necessarily about the dollar amount that's raised. It's actually about saying, if someone giving that donation to you is actually more of an emotional contribution, an emotional investment in your campaign, not just a financial one. And we found that actually our donors are often our best campaigners, and once they've donated, they really want to see you succeed. So often, a small donation is a way in which you can get people engaged and inspired by your campaign. The other thing is, to talk about this connection, I guess. And for us, I guess the glue that holds all these pieces together is your strategy and your communications and the way you think about your communications. You have your offline and online. And the best political campaigns that we've worked on are the ones that have been able to marry the two. So that digital is part of every single person in an organization's job, but also digital should be servicing every part of an organization as well. And that's actually really difficult, particularly with legacy organizations who have siloed organizations who perhaps have fundraising, campaigners, whatever it might be. To actually break down those silos, digital can tie that together, but that takes a real investment, both in terms of culture from the top down, but also in terms of investment in people and staff and resource. And I think that's one of the lessons learned, particularly from 2008, the Barack Obama campaign, which was my boss, Joe Rospers, who worked as the chief digital strategist on the campaign. He was sitting at the top table throughout that campaign. So he sat beside the communications director, the fundraising director, the political director, and so on, so that he was part of those discussions. Too often, digital was sort of put in a corner on the side, and they were left to find out 2 days later when a decision has been made. They brought digital right to the very heart of the organisation. So what I'm going to do now is, I guess, pull out some of the lessons we've learned. One of the things I have had to do for terms of brevity is cut some of, I had 1 or 2 slides on Scotland, but perhaps we can pick those up in the Q&A, because I know people are interested in the Scottish referendum and what might happen there. So perhaps we could pick up some of that in the Q&A as we go forward, because I think it's probably easier to tell you some lessons learned from campaigns that have happened as opposed to campaigns that are ongoing, but I'm more than happy to talk about that in the Q&A. So the first thing when you're looking to build a campaign is building relationships. You know, for us, you know, at every heart of every successful campaign is those relationships. You know, building relationships with supporters, building relationships with voters. Some of those relationships will be deeper than others, and that's okay. But like the rest of the world, and like the rest of your relationships, you know, it is absolutely vital that you invest in those relationships and actually look to keep those communication channels open and keep that ongoing relationship with your supporters, with your community. And just as we build relationships in other aspects of our lives, telling stories is how we do it in the political sense. So how do we tell the story of this campaign? How do we tell the story of your involvement? How do we tell the story of what we've achieved together? That's absolutely vital for a political campaign. And the old way of looking at, I guess, the communication between any organisation, be it political campaign, brand, or charity, was often this sort of broadcast model. You know, where you would have an organisation at the heart and it would pump out information one way, no chance for anyone to interact with it, and it was just sort of, it was almost out of date by the time it even reached you. Now we think you've got to put your organisation at the very, very heart of those conversations. And actually, yes, you have to put out your message, but also you have to understand that your supporters and those people who are enthusiastic about you will be talking about you and will be putting out your message and amplifying that. And that might be a little bit more messy, you know, frankly, than we're used to, perhaps particularly in the marketing industry, when you can control your advertising, you can control what is said about you. You know, it is that bit more messy for you. But those conversations that are happening anyway, so it's vital that you put yourself at the very, very heart of that. The other thing, the way in which we look at our supporters, is we think that every single organisation has one of these, which is a ladder of engagement, which essentially means that there are people at different stages in their relationship with you and with your organisation. And I think in the past, organisations have been, you know, pretty good at servicing those people at the very top there, so those evangelists who will kind of beat down the door to get involved in your organisation. And they've been probably pretty good at servicing those people at the bottom, those people who are kind of vaguely interested in your work and what you do. But there's this whole chunk of people at the middle who aren't quite ready to, you know, perhaps donate, head to an event, but they will do something for you. But using digital, we can now work out, you know, who these people are, what level of engagement they are with us and with our organisation, and service them at that level. And if they just stay on your email list, receiving the odd bit of content, sharing some content, that's fine. But over time, what you're looking to do really is build them up and get them more engaged with your organisation and your campaign. So to take them from that awareness, to acquire them on your database, whether that be email, Facebook, social, engage them through content, convert them to some sort of action, and then that sort of repeat as you go forward. And, you know, I've talked a lot about, you know, particularly about politics and charities as well, but I wanted to talk very briefly about one of our clients, which is the Green Bay Packers NFL team. The Green Bay Packers sell out their stadium basically from now until eternity. So there's not a job of work there to be done to sell tickets. But what you do have, you've got this diaspora of Green Bay Packers fans all across the US and now all across the world who, on a Sunday, want to find somewhere to watch football. And so what we've done is we've set up this idea it's called Packers Everywhere. It's basically a place where if you're a Packers fan, you can go online, find the nearest Packers bar to you, and then you can go along to that and have an interesting experience on a Sunday. You don't get to the field, but you get to have that sort of community aspect, which is absolutely vital to it's a whole part of the NFL show. And the thing for us is, that creates a whole opportunity for interesting content of Green Bay Packers fans, who are all over the country, but they have this one thing in common and this piece of their life in common. And what we found is those people that go along to those events are much more likely to buy from the shop. They're much more likely to try and get tickets. They are sort of part of this diaspora now, but they feel like they have something in common with this organization. And that's that lesson learned from politics, to know that if you can build a community online, and then if you can turn it offline, then it's much more powerful for your organization. The second piece is about telling a good story. I mean, I think that as part of politics is telling stories, and how does your narrative as an organization matter to a voter, but also a supporter? What is your role? So what we've tried to do is put together a whole bunch of content for our supporters, be it in the political space or not, to show them how their role and what they've achieved together as a group. And what I'm going to show you now is a short video from Hope Not Hate. Hope Not Hate in the UK is the anti-BNP. The BNP in the UK are the kind of far-right party. And Hope Not Hate was set up essentially to try and combat that, but I'll show you the video which talks to you about that.
In 2004, we did a survey on the BNP. It turns out people didn't like the angry campaigning against them. In fact, it made them feel a bit sorry for them. So we started a little group called Hope Not Hate. We wanted to give people a positive alternative to the far right.
I joined Hope Not Hate after the BNP won 12 seats in Barking and Dagenham Council. I wanted to be a part of a campaign that was working to build communities up and bring them together. A campaign that wasn't afraid to take on the difficult issues.
3 months before I was about to submit my PhD thesis, my husband was racially abused. It made me realize that a life in academia would never be as fulfilling as working towards change and bringing about hope every day as a campaigner. When I found Hope Not Hate, adding my voice seemed natural.
Since we began 10 years ago, hundreds of thousands have come together to bring hope to life, and we've achieved a lot.
We brought communities together to stand up against racism and the far right.
And we delivered millions of leaflets to get our message out.
We faced some setbacks, but when we did, we came back even stronger.
We kicked the BNP out of Barking and Dagenham Council.
We've had racists, Holocaust deniers and right-wing extremists barred from spreading their message of hate in Britain.
And today, even though the people we're opposing may have changed, our resolve and determination has stayed the same.
Okay, so the point of that video is to tell the story, yes, of the organisation that's 10 years old, but also tell it from the supporters' angle, individual supporters, but also the kind of collective supporters that have made a difference for that organisation. The other piece is thinking about how you use, and this is one of the things that the Obama campaign were absolutely fantastic at, is using a whole series of platforms and understanding what each platform did for you, particularly on social. We often look, and it's the same, I'm sure, with many people in the marketing industry, is owned, paid, earned, and owned. But we're also looking more and more at rented, which is your kind of Facebook channels as well, which, frankly, Mark Zuckerberg owns your people and kind of gates them for you for advertising. So the way in which we use different channels and tell different stories through those channels is absolutely vital. But the thing about, for us, is it's a journey you're looking to take people on. It's not just a one-off hit. It's not just one big email or one post. It has to be about taking people over time through the organisation and sort of bite-sized content that people can get their head around. We always put sort of one clear call to action in an email, one email, about one thing, and then look to build people on from there, rather than that sort of 12 links to 12 different things that are happening. You're not entirely sure what you've been asked to do. And we find that's really useful to give organisations a clarity in terms of the story they're trying to tell their supporters, but also for the supporter, it gives them a sense of, this is the most important thing you can do for me today. And in terms of the content in which you're writing, often when people come to, they're writing an email, a mass email, so suddenly their language is staid, suddenly it's very formal, and they change the way in which they communicate. You know, for us, we always try and use real people, not faceless organisations, as senders. You know, stories about the people will help. And the theory of change. So, what's your role in this change? And it works, and it makes such a difference. And I'll show you a quick. If you can't see it from here, I can certainly send it out afterwards. But this is basically a woman who donated $15 to the Obama campaign, and she emails out, essentially, she emails to say, this is all I can give, this is all I can do. But then we then use that content back to the list to say, look, this is what people are doing. People are stepping up. They're giving what they can to make sure that Obama is the next president. And that's, you know, that's part, and you can be part of this too. So it's absolutely vital that, you know, you use those supporter stories. So it's not just the kind of HQ message. The other thing as well, in terms of content and the way in which we think about that, is how do we use, how do we get, I guess, complex policy ideas and hone them down into kind of easily understandable bits of content. Well, this is an example, you know, that you may have seen before, that job creation, kind of complex policy area, but into a simple graph can make such a big difference for people. And again, when we're talking about this, we're talking about stories and ideas. One of our clients, the It Gets Better project, which people may have seen or heard of, that for me is a perfect example of a campaign with one clear idea at its very heart. It gets better. So I don't know if you saw, but Dan Savage, he's a blogger and journalist in the States. A couple of years ago now, there was a sort of spate of LGBT kids who had committed suicide because of bullying. And he just felt like, I need to do something about this. I need to get a message to these kids that, you know, that it gets better. So him and his partner made a simple YouTube video, basically with that short, simple message, and then sent it out on his Twitter feed. The response was incredible. From that, loads of people started making their own videos, you know, their own spin on this idea of it gets better, telling their own stories, and this whole project was born. And we were brought in as Blue State to try and amplify it, bring the content together, and turn it into something kind of substantial to take forward. And I've got a little short video that kind of tells the story.
High school was bad. I was obviously gay, and I did get harassed. What I'd love you to take away from it is that however bad it is now, it gets better, and it can get great.
Okay, little ones, here's the first thing you need to know.
You are perfect and wonderful exactly as you are.
You're not alone.
There are a ton of us out here in this world.
We love you without even knowing you.
There's art to be made. There are songs to be sung.
So hold on. Look at me, 80 years old. It gets better with age.
It gets better.
It gets better.
It gets better.
So much better.
You'll be fine, partner.
Your life can be amazing, but you have to tough this period of it out, and you have to live.
So that was an idea that started as a YouTube video that got turned into a campaign that gave hope to kids all around the world. But the thing about politics is, unfortunately, you can't tell your stories in a silo. So what you have is, you obviously have the opponents that are trying to tell your story for you, and you're trying to tell their story. And so what I've done is I put together I've got a short video of probably the best example, I think, from the Obama campaign of how you can try and define your opponent before they define you.
As governor, I cut taxes 19 times and didn't raise taxes.
He called them fees. I'm sure the people that had to pay it, whether they called them bananas, so he still had to pay extra.
I like fees on docking and fees on undocking as well. But yeah, so a fairly complex political argument, which is about raising taxes when you're a governor across the board, can be honed down to a kind of clear political message that hopefully is a bit engaging and interesting, and because it's told in that way. But the thing for us is digital is very measurable. So there's an element of, yes, you have to tell the story, and that's a sort of art piece, but there's also the science piece as well, which is the analytics and the way in which you can tell in real time what's working and what's not. Often kind of political strategy is kind of defined by the guru that sits in the beanbag and sort of pronounces forth what to do. But the Obama campaign, what they said from the start was, they wanted to measure everything. They wanted to use the left brain and the right brain for the campaign. So that was the technology to power the campaign, but also the technology and analytics to see, well, what's working and what's not? What are people responding to for us? And Jim Messina, who was the campaign manager for that, said this: we're going to measure every single thing on this campaign, and they did. And they were led by the numbers, and they were be willing to be proven wrong. Often they came up with subject lines they thought were winners, but actually didn't perform very well. And it's so important. When you're sending out to lists of multi-million people, you can test and you can segment. This here is a photo on the left of just one email that went out to, I think it's 26 different segments, because you took the time and effort to think about, well, how have people donated in the past? How can we talk to them in the future? What subject line will work with what group within this? What is the ask? So how much should we ask for? Should we ask for $10? Should we ask for $20? Should we ask for $50? All those different pieces were tested and tested and tested and optimized. And you can see on the right, on the right is it's a sign between what the worst projected, if they had just sent one email out and it performed at the worst level, that was what it would have done compared to what they actually did perform. And it was something that was absolutely in their DNA, was to be proven wrong and to be happy to be proven wrong because they let the numbers guide them. And organizations can do this, not just organizations with millions of people on their email lists, but for non-profits as well. It's absolutely vital in terms of testing your donation pages, testing your landing pages, and making sure they're as successful as they can possibly be. This is for one of our clients, Partners in Health. And there's just I think there's two twos there, sorry. There's 4 areas of the page that is being tested. There's photograph, copy, and amounts. And we do a lot of testing to make sure that we're getting the very much best out of our supporters, because so many people click through with the intention of giving, but then disappear for whatever reason. So you've got to make sure that you're as strong as you can be with it and put your best foot forward with that. One thing I would say, though, is, and this is a quote from Joe Roseburst, who's my boss, because there's a lot of talk of kind of big data now and how this is going to solve everyone's problems. The way in which you should look at these databases is this is a bunch of relationships that you have with your people, with your supporters, with your voters. And the database and the technology is there to help you facilitate those relationships rather than be the absolute driver for those relationships. The next piece, I guess, is for us is now, with digital particularly, supporters aren't passive observers any longer. So they want to take action. They want to do something for you. And this here is a photograph of Teddy Goff, who was the digital director in 2012. He had this card that he gave to every single one of his digital team, which said on it, how are you going to give our people the single best experience they can have in this election today? And that was given to every member of the digital team when they arrived on day one of their job. Because for them, it wasn't about what was done in that office, it was about their supporters. And that was a fantastic message to send out through the organisation. That is the metric, the one metric that you'll be judged on. At the end of the day, you need to be able to tell me how you gave our supporters a great experience in this election today, because they're the ones that are donating the money, pounding the streets, delivering the leaflets, and doing all the, the hard work. But online, there's a whole kind of multitude of opportunities for you to take action. And I think there's kind of 3 key questions you need to ask. What can your fans or supporters do for you today? What happens when they do it? So how do you feedback? Because too often people online sort of take action or donate money, but they never hear back from where did that money go, what did it do, what effect did it have, and how do you sustain interest and involvement over time? Political campaigns are time limited by their very nature, but for an organisation or brand, you're looking to continue on well beyond just like a 2-year cycle. So you need to think about ways in which you can sustain that interest and involvement over time. So you can do it for, email is one way of doing it. And in email for us, I just want to say a quick word about that, because it's still for us, we see the biggest driver for action. It's often kind of the forgotten cousin of digital tools available to campaigners with social now, but email still drives the most money, still drives the most action. So an email database, you own yourself, and you begin to put together a database in which you can understand who these people are and what they're willing to do for you. But you should be creative and try and think of new ideas in terms of what you can get your supporters to do and what kind of experiences you can offer them. And I'm going to just flick through one or two quick bits of video just to show you some examples of different campaigns. So the first one is from the François Hollande campaign. For the key debates for the François Hollande campaign, they hired a big room with massive bandwidth and Wi-Fi and got in what they call tweetos, which is essentially influential people on Twitter and social media. And they put them all together in a room, gave them pizza, gave them a fun experience, and I'm going to show you a bit of a video about them.
Bonsoir à tous, nous sommes ce soir à la Bellevilloise. Nous allons accueillir entre 250 et 300 activistes numériques pour suivre le débat d'entre les deux tours, entre Sarkozy et notre candidat François Hollande. Aujourd'hui, c'est vraiment la grosse riposte partie, c'est la dernière. On table sur 1000 activistes réunis sur toute la soirée et qui vont recevoir, comme tous les activistes qui sont ici, en temps réel, les argumentaires, les éléments de riposte, les infographies, les éclairages sur le programme, afin de pouvoir répondre du tac au tac en direct pendant l'émission.
And for these campaigns, it's not just about the event itself, it's about the social experience around it. So the video that gets sent to the people who didn't get to go, and you create this whole kind of ecosystem of content around those moments. One of the biggest sort of digital events that they had in the Obama campaign was Dinner with Barack, which essentially, if you donated more than $5, your name got put in a hat, and people were flown from all around the country to have dinner with Barack Obama, which was incredible. It was the first time this had ever been done. We actually had Café avec François in 2012 with François Hollande. But this was a way in which Obama could reward, obviously you can't reward the 1 million+ donors who give money to you, in the same way with that kind of personalized treatment. But it was a sign that said, well, actually, we do value these people who are donating $5 or more, and we're going to value them in such a way that we're going to bring them across the country and give them this incredible once-in-a-lifetime experience. And part of, I think, what campaigns don't realize is, people love these kind of behind-the-scenes experiences, those little things you can't get. The news, 24 News and so on, capture the kind of front of house, I guess, of a campaign or of a political party. But what you have as a political party is the kind of behind-the-scenes look, and I think that's much more interesting to your supporters than the kind of, the standard photo from the front. So I'll play a very short clip of this because it's too long to play on.
Your mother?
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna faint. What if I faint? I didn't formally invite you, but
she has disinvited me since, but she's re-invited me again afterwards, so it's been great. It's worked out okay at the end. I'm here. I made it.
I'm really excited about the fact that not only do I get to meet the president and the first lady, but the fact that I get to bring my dad, who has just been my hero and my mentor. So it's a great opportunity for us.
I'm going to order a steak and I'm going to ask for.
Hey everybody, we are kicking off our 48-hour campaign marathon right here in Iowa, where it all started back in 2007, 2008. You can hear it, crowds are excited, everybody recognizes it's time for us to really pull out all the stops. We've got early vote here in Iowa, so a lot of folks are already starting to vote, but we need every single one of you to be just geared up on these last 13 days. I can't wait. I'm hoping I get a chance to see you in your home cities. Let's keep it going. All right? Talk to you soon.
And that was uploaded into YouTube 15 minutes after it was shot. So the president was still speaking in Iowa and the main event when that was up and sent to supporters for them to engage with. So again, using those behind-the-scenes moments to give a different look to a campaign. But you can also put, and again, this is too long, but it's I think a lovely video which was launched, I think, around the springtime in 2012, where the Obama campaign were kind of looking to re-energize and re-inspire the supporters ahead of the long campaign to really just, again, to tell the story of, well, the story of us.
I stand before you today to announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America. And standing up with courage, they somehow managed to change the world. Yes, we can.
Barack Obama has won the Iowa caucuses.
You have done what the Senate said we couldn't do.
He's the first candidate we've ever seen who had an organization that brought together the internet and community organizing.
He makes me care, and he makes me want to get up and go and do something with my life.
The next Vice President, Joe Biden.
Okay, I'll move it on there because it's a lovely video, and if anyone's interested, I can send them the link. But again, it tells a story not just of the president, but of the organization and what the people built together. And I think, when we talk to not just political campaigns, but when we talk to brands, they say, well, how can we possibly do that for us? And Force Social is a good example of the work that we're doing to try and turn that kind of learning and that behind-the-scenes look at organizations, not just in the political space, but also in the brand space as well. And what we've done with Force Social is an email program, a social media program, which tries to give people, again, a behind-the-scenes look at what happens at Ford. So, for example, there was the motor show in Detroit. So we took 6 or 7 of the top bloggers who were really engaged with the social media program and took them to the Ford Motor Show and got them to ask questions of technologists, the leadership, and then that was all fed back to the list and fed back to the program. Because you're not going to take everyone to the Detroit Motor Show, but you can take some people from that community and then feed that back. So that's just a way in which you can use that learning for a brand, not just for a political campaign. The other thing about, well, any campaign actually, but particularly political campaigns, is I've been talking about kind of fairly organized and fairly regimented pieces of content, things that have happened. But moments happen in campaigns, and Peter was talking earlier about scenario planning. Moments that you can't predict, moments you don't understand, that you don't know what to do with. And you as an organization, particularly in the sort of 24/7 digital media world, have to be able to react and have to have the organization and the resources to be able to do that. So I'm going to take you through a couple of the kind of key moments, I guess, that we've worked on. Some, I guess, more positive than others. But if your candidate is in a debate and gives a fantastic answer to a question, what do you do?
Un président qui d'abord respecte les Français, qui les considère. Un président qui ne veut pas être président de tout, chef de tout et en définitive responsable de rien. Moi, président de la République, je ne serai pas le chef de la majorité. Je ne recevrai pas les parlementaires de la majorité à l'Élysée. Moi, président de la République, je ne traiterai pas mon Premier ministre de collaborateur. Moi, président de la République, je ne participerai pas à des collectes de fonds pour mon propre parti, dans un hôtel parisien. Moi, président de la République, je ferai fonctionner la justice de manière indépendante. Moi, président de la République, je n'aurai pas la prétention de nommer les directeurs des chaînes de télévision publiques. Moi.
So you can see you try to use that content from that moment in that debate to try and amplify that message. He nailed that question. Why do you want to be president of the Republic? Gave half a dozen or more answers, and then we got that out and tried to make that kind of interesting and visual way, not just kind of cut the clip, get it online, because frankly all the news channels had that. We were trying to give a different spin on it. I don't know if you remember Sarah Palin from 2008. It's difficult to somehow forget. But in the 2008 Republican convention, she said this.
I guess a small-town mayor is sort of like a community organizer, except that you have actual responsibilities.
So the Obama campaign hadn't planned to respond they'd planned to go dark during the Republican convention, but that comment went right to the very heart of what they were trying to do and what they were trying to achieve with the campaign. It was about saying that people could make a difference to politics if they got organised and actually tried to achieve something, that change was possible from the grassroots up, whereas essentially she was on that stage sneering at those people who were knocking on doors, going into the community and trying to organise. So right afterwards, and we're talking not the next morning, not the day after, but within an hour or two of that comment, this email was sent, which starts, "I wasn't planning to send you something tonight," which is true. And it goes on from the campaign manager, David Plouffe. And that was the highest grossing email in the 2008 cycle for the Obama campaign, because it spoke to that moment. You know, it gave people, I guess, an outlet for that anger and that frustration that people were feeling, having seen that and watched those comments. And the Obama campaign were the conduit, I guess, for people to be able to express those feelings. But you can only do that if you're well organised and you've got resource and you can be nimble. And it's actually very, very difficult. You know, as simple as you may think, sending one email, it's actually a lot more difficult and a lot more challenging than that. So that's why when I talked earlier about the culture of digital and the culture of having digital at the top table, this is the kind of output of that decision. And there was another version of this, I guess, in 2012. Some of you may have seen this, where Clint Eastwood fairly bizarrely spoke for most of his keynote speech to a chair as if it was Obama. He pretended the chair was Obama and he spoke to it. Very, very odd. But kind of how do you deal with that? Because Clint Eastwood, you know, a fairly well-liked actor, not a politician, kind of not a political hit. It was just kind of weird. So how do you deal with that? Well, you deal with it like this. This seat's taken. And that, up until the 4 more years tweet on election night, was the most retweeted tweet ever, because it was funny, it spoke to the moment, but also, frankly, it wasn't too harsh. It was the right tone of voice, both for Twitter and for that moment. It wasn't over the top. And I think that's, you know, what they were constantly striving for. But again, to get that out that quickly takes time and effort. I guess my last point is make important things easy to do. And I'm sorry, I know that's kind of obvious, right? And then it's kind of one of those slides that people put on, you can't really disagree with it, but it doesn't really add much. But actually, so often you see, online particularly, terrible experiences for people who want to take action, people who want to give money, and we basically make it nigh on impossible for them to do that. You know, like finding places to vote. Here's an example of the Obama tool and an example of the Romney tool to find a place to vote. Here it is here. So you type in your address, your zip code, you get presented with this lovely page, tells you when the polling place is open, where it is, so on and so forth. Romney, it's just a kind of Google map with some pins. Eventually you kind of get your way through to this, which is basically the state system, and you know, and it's just like, well, I don't know, whatever. So too often those kind of situations are driven by, frankly, just a lack of care and attention to the user's experience. You know, we talk about that in terms of web, but just the overall experience of interacting with the organisation has to be first class. The other thing is giving money as well. Again, when I talked earlier, so often people click through to donate, but they make it really, really difficult to actually do that. So one of the challenges that the Obama campaign tried to solve was saving payment details. The same way you can save your payment details for Amazon, you could click one click to donate or click via text. Again, just making that experience for people easy. If they want to donate, then you should have as few barriers as possible to allow them to do that. So, as my last kind of list before the Q&A, building relationships, telling stories, being able to prove you're wrong and learn from that through using the science of analytics and of the web. Supporters must be involved. Moments matter in campaigns, and you need to be set up to take advantage of those and make it easy for people to be involved with your campaign. But overall, I'd say this is, you know, you're in business for your mission, but the most important content is about the relationship you have with the people who matter to you. Okay, we'll move on to the Q&A.
Mr. Gregor Poynton, ladies and gentlemen.